Episode 278 The Truth of Cronus 2. It was a disconcerting sight. The sudden appearance of a pure white being, and the sacred power she exerts. As people were staring blankly, a group of troops led by the pure white knight appeared and swept across the battlefield. Exterminate the evil horde. Quarring. Quor. Hundreds of inspectors. They all manifested auras. At first, people who could not tell friend from foe began to understand the situation as they slaughtered the imperial army. It was not known where the being appeared. What is certain is that they defined the Kronos Empire as an evil force, and showed no restraint in fighting against hundreds of thousands of enemies. Ugh! Evil! Screams were heard from all directions. The white aura that rose up instantly cut down the soldiers of the Kronos Empire, and the resistance of the enemies who fought back later was meaningless. The tide of battle suddenly turned. The mysterious beings overwhelmed hundreds of thousands of troops. Behind them, the knight in white followed and shouted, "Arrogant and greedy ones! I have clearly warned you. If you were to go beyond the authority permitted to humans and turn the continent into darkness, we could no longer stand by and watch. However, in the end, you accepted a power that should not be touched in order to realize your ambition to conquer the continent." Whoosh! Whoosh! The aura was burning. A pure white aura colored her presence. "In the name of God, I will punish the evil horde. Bless. Pot. Quor." The aura of light spread in all directions. It was a blessing. Not only the inspectors following her, but also Dmitri and the soldiers of the Cairo Union were dazzled by the mysterious power that restored their bodies. It was an incomprehensible situation from beginning to end. But now that she had directly mentioned that she was an enemy of the Kronos Empire, Chris did not miss his golden opportunity. "Soldiers, follow me." He charged forward. He designated the beings who manifested holy power as his allies and helped them attack the Kronos Empire. From then on, a one-sided massacre occurred. The Kronos Empire, which had been struggling against the military power of 100 men, had no way to stop the attacks of Dimitri's soldiers who had recovered their stamina in an instant. Above all, the power of the prosecutors who followed the White Knight was overwhelming. In a series of eye-catching situations, the Duke of Bamford reacted with bewilderment. "What the heck is this? This war? It was an unexpected development. I knew about the White Knight, but Schaeffer, who was mobilized to deal with her, disappeared because of Roman Dmitri. The Kronos Empire still had overwhelming military power. They had a clear advantage in numbers, but they had no choice but to make a decision in the face of the situation. If things continue like this, we cannot avoid annihilation." I gritted my teeth. Although he was seething inside, he was not a foolish commander who would drive his soldiers to death for the sake of his pride. "All forces retreat. We will retreat to Gozong and plan for the future." Retreat. It was an unusual order. The Kronos Empire, which knew no retreat, chose to flee in the face of unfavorable odds. The troops quickly withdrew. High-pitched voice. "It's small, but it's still a castle. If we choose Mercury and Gozong, we judge that we can buy enough time until the successor forces of the Kronos Empire arrive." It was the best decision for the Duke of Bamford. Even if it meant being held accountable for defeat, a decision that could be made for the future was needed rather than a crushing defeat that resulted in the loss of hundreds of thousands of troops. However, the Duke of Bamford's face turned pale as he reached his destination. On the wall, beneath the fluttering flag of Dmitri, a flame-breathing entity was seen. "The moment you realize that it's Felix." Fuck. The Duke of Bamford knew he was being set up. It was the details that made the strategy complete. When Roman Dmitri said that he would defeat the Kronos Empire in a head-on confrontation, Flora Lawrence added one thing. "Whether we win or lose in a head-on confrontation, the existence of the castle is very important. If we win, the Kronos Empire will likely use the castle as its last bastion, and if we lose, we can use the castle to attack the enemy's rear. That's why, From now on, instead of handing over the castle's food, we must hide in the castle's underground tunnels that the enemy will never find. And when the time comes, we can choose whether to open the castle gates and attack the enemies after securing the castle, or to block the enemy's escape route to the castle. I trusted Roman Dmitri. However, pursuing perfection was the role of the staff, and Flora Lawrence's strategy was adopted with everyone's support. Holy being. It was an unexpected variable. But now that the Kronos Empire was retreating to the castle's troops remained true to their role. Fire rain. Huarak. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Felix created a flame of mana. His magic exerted an absolute presence on Mercury, and fire fell from the sky, turning the ground into a sea of fire. Boom. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Qua. The soldiers of the Kronos Empire heading towards the castle screamed in burning pain, and the soldiers following them reacted with confusion. In front, the Phoenix wizards who had taken over the castle attacked, and behind them, the soldiers of the Cairo Union, led by the Holy Knights, Dmitri, attacked. I'm completely cornered. If they had known that the castle would fall, they would have prepared in advance, but since they did not have any of the supplies needed for a siege, they were helpless against the magic that fell from the castle walls. It was a place surrounded on all sides. While they were at a loss as to what to do, the soldiers were massacred in a one-sided manner. The enemies are cornered. Kill them all. I was pushed to the edge. The soldiers of the Kronos Empire fought back with faces that had lost their will to fight, as if they were struggling against the attacks that came from the front and rear. Hundreds of thousands. The numbers had no meaning. The moment you lose your will to fight, defeat becomes reality. Don't back down. We are Kronos. Kronos will never be defeated. The Duke of Bamford. He went crazy. Unlike the blood running down his neck as he shouted, his face was painted with despair. I couldn't believe it. Because the defeat of the Kronos Empire is impossible. Duke Bamford himself took up arms and faced his enemies, glaring at the blinding arrows. Puck. Ugh. An arrow piercing the heart. Blood spread. As my vision blurred, I finally accepted reality. This war. The war with Dmitri, which everyone was certain of victory in, was a complete defeat for the Kronos Empire. The outcome of the war was decided in a single moment. As the odds grew dark and the commander collapsed, screaming, the soldiers of the Kronos Empire gave up hope of victory despite their overwhelming numbers. From then on, I was in confusion. Some fled in all directions to survive, some threw down their weapons and surrendered, and some fought to the end to protect the pride of the Kronos Empire, only to meet death that prompted the two types of decisions mentioned above. It's over. A fierce war. At the fact that the end was victory, Cairo and Dimitri's soldiers cried out in triumph. We won. Long live Dmitri. Roman. 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 The name they call themselves. Roman Dmitri. Victory came from it. If he had not dealt with Hannibal, the Knights of Kronos, and the Eighth Circle wizard Shepher, even if the holy being had appeared, he would not have been able to secure victory. It didn't matter that Roman Dmitri wasn't there. They believed that the being they trusted would definitely return. A place filled with enthusiastic cheers. Chris approached a figure with a face soaked in blood. It was a heterogeneous entity. In a battlefield where corpses were piled up like mountains and blood flowed like rivers, the knight in pure white did not look like a normal human being. Chris asked. Thank you for helping us. But where on earth do you come from? The White Knight. It was a mysterious entity. I had never heard a rumor of a being like her on the Salamander continent, but her words seemed to have been known from the beginning to the Kronos Empire. I couldn't understand it from beginning to end. The power she displayed, and the inspectors who followed her, were existences that could not be hidden even if they were hidden. The White Knight looked at Chris. It was beautiful. With her pure white skin and blonde hair blowing in the wind, her appearance alone made one doubt whether she was human. She said, "I am Isabel, Queen of Luna, the only human nation in Arcadia, beyond the endless mountains." Arcadia. Luna. Isabel. Chris reacted in surprise at the unexpected series of words. Shepherd dies. The passage opened. As Roman Dmitri entered the passage, he found himself not in the middle of a battlefield, but at the edge of an endless mountain range. First, I returned to Dmitri. Roman Dmitri, who confirmed Isabel's existence and victory in the war through magical communication, made an appointment in Kairos when Isabel said she wanted to meet him. And the first place we headed to wasn't Adelian's warp gate. Before leaving Dmitri, there was one thing I had to check first. Dimitri's library. I found an ancient book there. It was a record of the deeds of historically known figures, and after checking several old books, I discovered some familiar names. Maximilian. A wandering swordsman who stirred up a stir on the Salamander continent. As a 5-star aura swordsman, he traveled the continent, taking on those who were considered strong, and caught the eye of Emperor Kronos, rising to prominence. At that time, he acquired the surname Maximilian and served the Kronos Empire under the name of Count Maximilian. And he, who once reached the top of the Kronos rankings, met a peaceful death in the back alleys of history. It was the movement of one person. The ancient books contained detailed accounts of how the people who left their mark on history lived. However, there was one part that Roman Dmitri paid special attention to. Count Maximilian. Before the name people remember was born, a section of the ancient book told of his real name. Count Maximilian. His real name is Sven. Sven. The shadow that attacked Dmitri. That's right, that was his name. If only Sven had been mentioned, Roman Dmitri would not have remembered the connection between the shadows. Mystic. He is a mysterious being. He developed magic that manipulated space and caused a new stir on the continent, but unlike people's interest, he disappeared at some point. A wizard who once studied with him said that his name was Mystic Ellington. Long ago. Born as the eldest son of the Ellington family in the Kronos Empire, he was a magical genius recognized by the magicians of the continent. He realized the truth of magic at a young age and played a big role in the magical development of the Kronos Empire, but like Mystic, he disappeared at some point. Because of this, there was much talk in the Kronos Empire. The disappearance of magicians was always a recurring event in history, and since there was no clear evidence left at the present, Ellington's very existence was questioned. The Ellington family also disappeared into the back alleys of history after the eldest son's disappearance. There were many speculations about his real name, and various names such as Sharoni, Sherp, and Sheffer were mentioned as his real name. Mystic and Sheffer. They were in the old book too. If so, the existence of the shadows did not fall from the sky. It was clear that those who had made historical achievements worthy of being recorded in ancient books had, for some reason, existed as shadows, until now. The problem didn't end there. Roman Dmitri read Sheffer's memories and discovered 4 names, the last of which shocked Roman Dmitri. Substitute. What does that name mean? The last name was revealed proudly from the first page, not in an old book, but in the most splendid of books. Emperor Alexander. The founder of Aura. He was the last name Roman Dmitri was looking for. That moment. Flash. Emperor Kronos opened his eyes. He woke up and grimaced at the pain that was setting in. Is there anyone there? I asked if there was anyone there. A dry, cracked voice. His face was powerless, but his eyes showed an intelligence I had never